Hello everyone, I'm James Obuhuma, faculty member at African Nazarene University, and my co-author Shingai Zivuku, who is a student at African Nazarene University. We carried out a study on social engineering based at cyber attacks in Kenya. This was motivated by the fact that cybersecurity is a major challenge, especially as we transition into the fourth industrial revolution and as IoT booms. It's good to mention that cybercriminals are always viewed from a complex, sophisticated perspective. This has led to many organizations having to invest in high-tech solutions using either the layered security model that views security from different perspectives, perimeter walls, network security, data, application security. Others tend to use defense in-depth strategies, which brings in clear plans and strategic plans on how to take care of security. The layered security architecture model could also be swallowed within the defense in-depth security strategies. However, with all this, we tend to forget about social engineering, which is becoming the greatest threat to information systems. Social engineering is a psychological form of attack that exploits the weakest layer of information system, who are the users, the people, you and I. So the objectives of the study, the main objective was to present and demonstrate an analytical approach towards social engineering in Kenya, and further try to come up with a countermeasure towards it. Specific objectives: number one was to explore the level of understanding of the various forms of social engineering in Kenya. Number two, to determine the prevalence of social engineering attacks in Kenya. And lastly, to propose a model that could act as a countermeasure for social engineering. Our research approach or methodology entails random sampling to select participants and to select the participants who would also validate a proposed model. And we use both qualitative and quantitative data collection strategies, where online surveys and face-to-face interviews were used. And data analysis was conducted using the Microsoft Excel data analysis tools with charts and descriptive narratives discussed as the main outcomes of the study. So just to summarize the main outcomes of the study, more details are in the paper. So we started with the pre-study, during which we realized that most Kenyans did not realize what social engineering is and the forms of social engineering unless they are explained to or given some explanation or narrative about what it is. So after doing that, we had now to make it in a clear way. We define what social engineering is and the forms, and then inquired to see whether they were familiar about them. And that is the outcome. We realized that most of them knew what smishing is, closely followed by phishing and vishing. The range wasn't so huge, so it meant that they were aware of these three forms. Then we tried to find out whether they had fallen victims of any of them, and those who accepted to have fallen victim say that vishing and smishing were at the top, 47 and 44%, following one another, and phishing was slightly low. And the further explanation, they say that most of the attacks that they fell victim to, financial gain was the main motive behind the attacks, as the others felt like identity theft was the reason. But for those even who say the identity theft was the reason, they also explain the fact that the attackers were using identity theft with the aim in return to get financial gain. We keenly also try to explore why did they fall victim? What is this strategy that the attackers used that made them not realize that they were being attacked? And we looked at 6 key persuasion principles: authority, social proof, liking, scarcity, consistency, and reciprocity. And authority was topping with a very huge margin from the others. If I may just explain, authority means attackers put themselves in an authoritative position whereby the victim feels like, yes, this question or instructions are coming from authority, from a higher level, and then they end up giving in. Social proof and liking, which were tying. Liking is a scenario whereby an attacker determines what you love most, and he tends to play with your mind by offering to give you what you like most. You will tend to give in without knowing now that you've been duped. Social proof, on the other hand, is more of making a decision based on a prior decision that was made by someone or a group of people. So you tend to flow with the current. So you end up giving in to something. And scarcity, which was also slightly high, is a scenario where attackers create a scarce form of scenario that will make you get threatened and feel like you will suffer because of the scarce nature that is coming soon. So you end up to giving again. Looking at whether there exist laws, 60% of Kenyans felt that there were no laws on social engineering. A few said maybe, and a very small percentage said yes. Unfortunately, those who said yes, even when asked to state 1 or 2 laws that they thought existed, they could not quote any. And lastly, we sought to find out which form did the participants feel Kenyans are still vulnerable to with the current state, and smishing and vishing were the top, with a close range, 44% against 40%, against 45%. So you were keen to look at why was vishing and smishing dominating? Why were the 2 forms dominating? And we realized that there are many reasons, varied reasons as to why they dominate. Both of them thrive due to the growth in mobile phone usage and mobile money transfer. Of course, Kenya and East Africa has a money transfer called M-Pesa, which is very common, and many people do a lot of mobile banking using it. And there was a lot of unprotected data collected by these mobile transfer agents. Mostly they correct your phone number and ID number, and it lies idle. And then both of them are applicable even with feature phones. These are the opposite of smartphones. You don't necessarily have to have a smartphone for you to be vulnerable to smishing and vishing. And many people always assume that idle prisoners carry out random attempts in Kenya. Vishing alone is much easier to convince someone by a phone conversation, and we also determined that vishing denies victims time to think through a conversation, so they end up giving in. Smishing is a cheaper form since the cost of SMS is just extremely low and affordable to anyone who would want to carry out an attack. Given the opportunity to suggest some solutions, the sample suggested a number of solutions as you might see them in the chart that is provided. User education and awareness was stopping, leading with a very huge margin, 32%, and followed by enactment and enforcement of laws at very low rates. Others like strict penalties, blacklisting, coming up with innovative solutions, also following in that ladder. So these results informed us to think deeper on how do we carry out user education and the awareness as the prime issue, and how innovative could we be in solving, or rather coming up with a solution of that nature. Hence, the study now proposes an expert system kind of model composed of domain experts who provide and validate knowledge that is formulated in form of rules that go into the rule base, and users will access this knowledge in the knowledge base by inferring the knowledge through an inference engine, or they could go through a training and testing engine by going through self-paced tests that you could be gradual. You go level by level as you earn badges. And the proposed model user interface should be in form of a chatbot presented in as a web application or a mobile application. That formulates a whole system that is innovative in an expert system. So what is the significance of the study? The resulting study outcome could aid in formation of information security policies and awareness programs, which could in return lead to formation of national and international laws. We saw that as a major gap that was missing. And then the proposed awareness model will lead to a knowledgeable society, because people learn on their own and infer knowledge where necessary. And in return, it will lead to reduced success rates of successful attacks. And this will be beneficial to both individuals who just want to play safe, and organizations. Even when they are hiring their employees, they could subject them to such tests, mandatory tests. So in conclusion, the study determined that vishing and smishing stands out as commonly used forms, with financial gain being the prime goal. And the study also affirms authority as the main persuasion strategy used by attackers. In the review of literature, we realized that other studies had also featured authority, and apparently this study affirmed it. And we also determined that attackers persistently make attempts before one of them becomes successful. Then Kenyans fall victim of social engineering due to lack of awareness. There is education is so the reason, and hence the proposed awareness model. Future work lies in implementation of the proposed model and also validation by a larger sample size, which we have planned to do it. Thank you, and if you have any questions, you can ask them or send them to my email address as displayed on the screen.